Here's Brody Brazil.
Well, another day and another new thing we learned about the Orlando Dreamers. They're still trying to get Major League Baseball to come to their town, but internally, the Dreamers are actually not even calling themselves that anymore. They've got a new name, which is something we learned from this interview that Channel 9 in Orlando did with Dr. Rick Workman. He is the anchor investor of the Dreamers. John Morgan is another primary investor, but not the anchor investor. What I'm going to do here, because this clip is not very long, I'm just going to play it through, and then I'm going to break it down piece by piece right afterwards. Watch this.
Only on 9, I sat down with the anchor investor of Orlando Dreamers Baseball this afternoon for an exclusive interview. He told me that the inner office phrase now, that they are no longer calling themselves dreamers, but doers, and that if the Tampa Rays want to move here, they are ready, willing, and able. In this first sit-down interview since being announced as the billion-dollar investor, he told me that they have the money to buy a team, build a stadium, and enhance Central Florida in more ways than just sports.
Listen to all this.
It's just not every city gets this opportunity very often. And what has dawned on me, and sometimes, freaked me out a little bit to go, I think this could really happen. And right now, I think the odds are very good this happened because what was once a solved problem became an unsolved problem. And we're here and we are ready. And I think eventually somebody may knock on our door and say, you can help solve a problem, and we're ready.
Wow.
And that problem is the Tampa Rays. They have no stadium, no money, no financing, and no land. Workman said that having attorney John Morgan and Major League Baseball Hall of Famer Barry Larkin on board are huge advantages. The focus is now on the county and city to work on the public partnership that is required by Major League Baseball. That may simply be the donation of land or tax abatement.
It's not that simple. Greg Warmoth, who, by the way, I really appreciate you doing this interview, acquiring this content for us to talk about. I mean, this is important stuff going on right now in Orlando. So piece by piece, I didn't want to stop that because it was only about 90 seconds, but the Orlando Doers, let's start with that one. They're not calling themselves internally as the Dreamers anymore, but you understand Dreamers was just that placeholder. It's something that has existed for them for 5, 7, 8, 10 plus years. I mean, as long as the concept has been around, it's always been the idea of the Dreamers, and that kind of went along with, hey, an expansion team will eventually name something else, but now it's the Rays that are right in front of them, so of course they'd be changing the name. Dreamers was a placeholder. It was never built for the long term, but it kind of gives you an idea right now that on the inside, and they're willing to let this to now the outside. This isn't just keep it in our inner circle thing. They're telling people now that we're calling ourselves the Doers, not even the Dreamers anymore. We're willing to ditch that name, and most likely, let's be honest, the name that Orlando really wants is the Rays. And so Dreamers was definitely temporary. They'll call themselves the Doers because, Dreamers also seems like it's a far-fetched thing. It's a long shot. I don't know that the shot is as long anymore as pointed out there by Dr. Rick Workman. So the Doers is what they're calling themselves on the inside, not the Dreamers anymore. And they're very aware, I'm sure, of that criticism that people said, hey, I don't even care about baseball here nor there. Now, that's not my position. I'm saying others say this, but they just didn't like the idea of the name Dreamers. Like, you got to call yourself something else. So we can understand now that they're already pivoting away from that. Ready, willing, and able, right? That's what was translated there from Dr. Workman's interview to part of that news broadcast there. This is no longer a generic play just for Major League Baseball by the Dreamers or the Doers. This is no longer, hey, we're going to work towards, dealing with baseball, trying for expansion, however it's going to be. No, this seems pretty intentional. Now they're mentioning the Rays by name, and this adds pressure to that situation. But I will say, from the other side of this, right, if you are the Rays and owner Stuart Sternberg, this adds leverage to your situation. We haven't really talked about that much. We've always talked about Orlando. Is it possible? Is it doable? Now they're the Doers. Is this doable? But realistically, how about going back to Tampa and St. Pete? Well, they now know that there is another suitor out there, and they would have some competition. It's not just Tampa and nobody else realistically anymore. Orlando has reasonably entered the conversation. So as much as we talk about the logistics of Orlando, could it work? Would Stuart Sternberg sell the team to this Orlando Dreamers group? This adds leverage to those in Tampa and St. Pete to maybe get something done now. It's pressure that the Rays get to put on Tampa and St. Pete right now. And I'm not saying that helps that situation happen anymore or any better. It might actually make things messier in Tampa and or St. Pete. But I'm just saying that Orlando letting everybody know that they're ready, willing, and able, that puts the pressure on everybody and anybody else. Dr. Workman was called a billion-dollar investor in that piece. Now, the Dreamers say they've got about $2.5 billion spoken for, $1.5 billion to acquire a baseball team, whether that's expansion fees or paying for players or whatever it is, or buying a team or expansion. That's pretty much the two ways in, but most likely buying a team. They've also stashed away or have commitments to up to $1 billion right now just for the stadium alone. So $2.5 billion total, but you heard there that Dr. Workman is being called the billion-dollar investor. So you'd have to think, with John Morgan reportedly coming in somewhere around $200 million, maybe $250, I think, were some of the initial reports, and all of this is, I'm sure, fluid and flexible. Rick Workman is now said to be in that $1 billion range. This is not something that we previously knew before. We knew it was an anchor investor amount of money, but not necessarily $1 billion. Is that outdated? That one? Never. Or was it never? They also say, the Dreamers do, that they have the money right now. So this is not a situation where sometimes people have some money or most of the money, but not all the money. And this sounds to me like a situation where it's not like we have to go to the bank and take what we have and put a loan against that. No, it sounds like they've got the resources, they've got the dollars right now to get this done. You heard Rick Workman say there that the odds are very good. He also said there what was once a solved problem became an unsolved problem. That was the Rays' forever home in St. Pete, the one at the gas plant site, right next to Tropicana Field. What they had planned for, what they had pitched, their whole here-to-stay situation that the city and county approved. St. Pete was in, Pinellas County was in, and then all of a sudden the Rays said, wait a second, this took a little bit too long and it's going to cost more now, and we're not in on this anymore. And so basically, Orlando and the Dreamers are admitting that you guys had this one in the bag. And because it's no longer in the bag, we're here and we're ready. And to that point, I mean, the Orlando group is basically saying, hey, this team has a problem because there were some things up in the air and they couldn't even solve it, and it still remains a problem that they don't have a future and forever home. Somebody may knock on our door, Dr. Workman says. Well, come on, I think the Dreamers are the ones that are knocking on doors. It's a matter of if anybody opens that door for the Dreamers. If Stuart Sternberg says, okay, I will sell this team to you guys because you are offering top dollar, or quite honestly, maybe Stuart Sternberg isn't ready to get out of baseball entirely. Now, you'd have to think, if it is the Orlando group, they're going to want control of this team. They're going to want the majority interest of this team. What if Sternberg stays in it for 33%? I suppose that's possible too. Sell 66 point whatever percent, have it go to Orlando, and Sternberg still gets to be part owner, and the team can have that forever home in Orlando if this group can really get it done. Again, I just want to make clear, I'm pointing out hypotheticals here. A lot of people have said to me lately, you're trying to get the Rays to move to Orlando. No, that is not it at all. I see this from the Tampa and St. Pete side of things. I'm trying to let you know that I've seen this movie before. I've seen how this works, and it has successfully worked before. Like, just in this fashion, how Orlando is entering the chat, a little bit casually and then quite firmly. And as long as things kind of backpedal and are slippery in Tampa and St. Pete, Orlando continues to make ground, and Tampa and St. Pete, I almost said Oakland, doesn't. You get the picture. And so it's no longer a long shot. I think that's very clear that for as much as they were the Dreamers, and this was a far-off idea for Rick Workman and everybody else, now they're starting to feel like this is tangible. They can taste this. They can see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Now, going back to the news report there on Channel 9, when it was described that the Rays are the problem, right? That they had a problem that was solved and then unsolved. There were 4 things that were mentioned there. The Rays have no stadium, no money, no financing, and no land. Not all of that, though, is entirely true. The Rays still do, have a contract with St. Pete to play at Tropicana Field for 3 more seasons. And that should kick in if repairs are approved and if a commitment is made, which it hasn't been. Things should be okay to play at Tropicana Field if they can get everything together. I realize putting a roof on during hurricane season and trying to get that done before opening day of 2026, that's going to be difficult. But as of right now, they're playing at a temporary spot. They still do have a contract to go play back in St. Pete again. So it's not to say that they don't have a stadium anymore. They kind of do. So that part's not entirely true. Do they have a long-term future stadium? No, they absolutely don't. No money. Now, that's a question. That sounds like a pretty accurate description. Like Stuart Sternberg didn't have enough to pull off the project and maybe needed more. He said he, along the way, needed more investors to jump on to maybe cover the gap, bridge the gap of what the project used to cost and now what it was about to cost. So maybe they don't have enough liquid assets to move forward on projects. Maybe they don't have financing. The Rays don't for anything else that they want to do right now. I mean, they had a deal and they couldn't even follow through on the deal that they suggested. So maybe they don't have the assistance. They don't have the current liquid assets, and maybe they don't have the people to come in and do the financing for Stuart Sternberg. And I'll tell you what they definitely don't have, right? So stadium's a question. Actually, no, I take it back. Stadium is definitive. They have a stadium if they want to legally hold St. Pete to it. Who knows if they've got the money? Who knows if they can actually go out and get the financing? Doesn't seem like it. But they definitely don't have land, right? The Rays don't have a site that's ready to go. It's shovel ready, a plan for it, approvals for it. They don't have, which is very important, they do not have that part right now. So we should be clear about that. The public partnership that was also described in that news report, in saying that the focus is now on the city of Orlando and the county, Orange County of Florida, not the one that that's going to be confusing. The Angels and Rays would both be playing in Orange County, California, Orange County, Florida, but I digress. The news report said that a public partnership, like a public-private partnership of funding a stadium, is required by Major League Baseball. So is that official? Like, should baseball just come out and say, hey, we don't do new teams or new stadiums, we don't move teams unless we get public funding? Whatever happened to the idea of privately funding anything or everything? It seems to me like baseball has subtly floated this out there. They've kind of said it without saying that we don't do projects anymore. We don't do collaborations in existing stadiums and places or brand new spots. We don't do it unless there is a public subsidy associated. That is it's a hard thing to just take that as the new standard, that public funding and public partnerships, public subsidies are required by Major League Baseball. That's kind of a bad look. Other teams have done it successfully. Look at the San Francisco Giants. They wanted a new stadium. They paid for and built their own new stadium. And last but not least, the news report also pointed out that, well, that public partnership is relatively simple. It could simply be the donation of land or tax abatement. Well, the donation of land might be the cheapest part if that were just it. Maybe the land is worth, I don't know, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Who knows exactly that plot of land, which I'll do another video on different Dreamers stadium sites. But that's the easy part if it were just donation of land. You know that what the team is out for is probably a tax increment finance district or tax breaks or tax abatement or whatever to the tune of hundreds of millions, if probably not $1 billion. So to say that, oh, well, the simple part is to get the city and county on board for, donation of land or tax abatement. Yeah, but to what amount? Like to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars? $1 billion? That is not necessarily the simple part. If you've watched recent teams and cities and counties and stadium situations, this is the hairy part, right? Hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in public subsidies, not easy. But anyway, I appreciate everybody involved here in bringing us this interview. I thought just that small piece gave us so much to bite off and chew on there. And I find this whole situation fascinating. Again, I just want to point out here, this is not me having necessarily a horse in the race. I definitely see things more from the Tampa and St. Pete side, but I I have to call out what I'm seeing in Orlando right now because it's all too familiar, and we'll see how this goes. This is going to be an interesting next few weeks and months because the Rays really don't right now have much figured out. It has been so quiet on the Tampa and St. Pete side of things. All we're hearing from right now is Orlando. Maybe that's shooters just shooting their shot. And maybe their time will come and go. And maybe something is happening behind the scenes in Tampa and or St. Pete, but certainly doesn't feel that way right now. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, thumbs up while you're down there. I'd very much appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. That way I can definitely see you back here next time.